My mother brought my brother and I to church occasionally when we were young. After I got out of high school, I didn't have anything to do with God at all. Didn't attend church, didn't think about God, never read a Bible. Was I living a prodigal son lifestyle? Perhaps. Was I even a Christian? That's a theological debate. All I know for sure is this. When I was 40 years old, my life was a mess. It was a wreck. And because of that, I started saying foxhole prayers occasionally. I didn't know if God was real, and if he was real, I didn't know if he would forgive me for all the things that I had been doing. Again, my life was in shambles. And then one night, I was drunk, and I was driving to go get some drugs, and I was on Highway 35 in Austin, Texas. Isaiah 35, the highway of holiness. I turned left and went north on Highway 183. And not long after I took that turn, all of a sudden on the right-hand side of the road, this big 40-foot tall cross lit up on the right-hand side of the road. And it startled me. Not only that, but right after that, all of a sudden, God speaks a thought impression into my mind. It's the first time that I ever made conscious connection with God, but I wasn't sure at that time, am I losing my mind or did God really speak to me? Because I had this kind of knowing feeling that I never had before. It was a totally new experience. Well, I went back and where that took place. Curious, did I really experience God? Did I really have this kind of encounter? Was I hallucinating or did I really see this 40-foot tall cross? I'm 40 years old, 40-foot tall cross light up on the right-hand side of the road. Well, that's when I found out that where that took place in that general area is a church called Gethsemane Lutheran Church in Austin, Texas. My first thought was, that's kind of interesting. I was brought up going to the Lutheran church occasionally. Gethsemane stands for Garden of Decision. Jesus' famous words, "Let not my will, but let thy will be done," took place in the Garden of Gethsemane. I had a decision to make just like Jesus had to make a decision when he was in the garden. My decision had to be, am I going to keep living this lifestyle of sin that I was living, or am I going to turn from that? And am I going to turn towards God? My life was such a mess. I was ready for change. And so that was kind of interesting, though, to find out it was called Gethsemane. Another thing that was kind of interesting about it was that church, if you look it up and research it, the church in the Gethsemane Lutheran Church is called, by some people are known as being the stained glass church. Because in the inside, you can't see it from the highway, but from the inside, if you look forward in the sanctuary, there's a 40-foot tall stained glass, and in the middle of that, there's a cross. Isn't that interesting? Of course, stain represented my sinful condition. And the other interesting thing about that encounter was that I found out that church began being built in 1962. I was born in 1962. Right after that, I found out the church that I went to when I was growing up, that my mom brought my brother and I occasionally, was called James Lutheran Church, actually St. James Lutheran Church. About a couple of weeks after that encounter that I had with God, this movie came out called Bruce Almighty. And in that movie, and I'm watching this movie and I'm reliving what happened to me that night, but in that movie, Bruce is having some difficulty. And he's praying and he's driving in his car just like I was. And he's praying, "God, just show me a sign. I need a sign. I need a sign from you." And all of a sudden, a dump truck pulls out in front of him with all these blinking signs in the back of it. Of course, Bruce didn't see him because he was spiritually blind at that moment in time. When I think back at that night, I still think about that. I'm 40 years old and that 40-foot tall cross, which appeared out of nowhere. Those spiritual markers that we have like this are what give us so much strength to turn around and do even greater things by faith. When I think back at that night, I think that was my aha moment. What was your aha moment? Please share that with me in the comment section below.